try and talk loud. Is this loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Blair Orr. I'm a faculty member in forestry at Michigan Tech University. My talk is on ethnobotany and global literacy in the classroom. It's a course I teach at Michigan Tech. If we'd been allowed to use the correct font size and putting together the program, it would have been titled like this, okay? It's very heavy on the ethno side and very light on the botany side, because if it had been like heavy on the botany side, it wouldn't qualify as a global literacy class. So my talk is really descriptive. It's very kind of low end. I don't have a hypothesis to it. I'm just going to go through and explain what general education is at Michigan Tech. Then I'm going to talk about how my class fits into general education. I think people who work at universities are fairly familiar with this idea in the United States. But every university handles general education a little bit differently. And so the name of the course is Ethnobotany. But if I were to actually give it the correct name, it would be ethnobotany for people who are checking the box, okay? We have a set of students who are very career-driven. They're primarily engineers or in engineering-like fields. And their objective to going to Michigan Tech is to get a good job, often in the automotive industry, chemical industry. And so they really don't have much use for these general education classes. That is not a Michigan Tech student falling asleep. I just pulled the picture off the internet, but it could be, okay? I mean, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for general education classes. And this is what our general education curriculum looks like. We have 4 core classes that everybody has to take. They really despise these even more than the ones that I'm going to talk about. There are 3 credits for each class. It's 128 credits to graduate, so it's not a huge portion of the curriculum. They take it early on. You'll notice that global issues are up on the list as well. So that's part of what our learning goals are at Michigan Tech, that they must have some knowledge of global literacy. It may seem odd, but we teach some of our global issues classes in classrooms, so they never get out in the world. And some of those classrooms do not even have windows. So it's just we're changing our policy. I'll say that in classes, we're doing that now. Then we have a series of classes that are called CAS classes. So they have to take 3 credits in communications and composition, 3 credits in humanities and fine arts, and 3 credits from social sciences and behavior. And then they have 3 other credits that they have to take from somewhere. It could be one of those 3 lists. They can go back and repeat it, or they can take classes from what's called the restricted list. That's for my classes, my ethnobotany class. So again, this is a class that students really are not that fond of. And there's some structure around what I have to teach, and that's primarily what I'm going to go into. We need to have these general education classes in order to be an accredited university. And so we have our crazy little circle that we go through to make accreditors happy, that this is how we structure our planning and development of learning goals. So we have learning goals. Every university that's accredited by a national accrediting body probably has these buried deep in a document somewhere. And then they also must be assessed. So any course that is on a pass list of any kind has to meet at least 1 learning goal. Some meet multiple ones. We have 8 learning goals, of which 6 apply to the pass lists. And they must be assessed at some point in the process. I'm not really going to go into the assessment part. So my class, Ethnobotany, is a global literacy class. Okay, that's a group it fits into. So one thing that you'll see as I go through the talk is that it's probably not like a lot of ethnobotany classes that people might teach elsewhere, in that once I meet the restrictions of the university, I can talk about anything I want. So because it has global literacy, I can stray from some of the topics that might be traditionally called ethnobotany, and nobody gets mad at me because they're not concerned about the ethnobotany, they're concerned about the learning goals when I do this. So that's why the ethno is emphasized over the botany. If it were truly a botany class, they would not put it in general education. They would put it into the science requirement classes instead. So we have 5 sub-goals under global literacy, and in order to be considered a global literacy class, it has to fit into at least 3 of those sub-goals. My class actually hits all 5 of them. It was designed to hit all 5 of them. And so one of them is global awareness. They have to have some level of global awareness, which talks about the scale of human impact on the natural world. And so I do some things on climate change, because that's a whole big global topic. But I also do things like abusive fertilization in the Midwest and the effect it has on the Gulf of Mexico with the hypoxic zone and the dead area. And so again, when I'm talking on this, you can see, well, I'm talking about modern industrial agriculture, and then all of a sudden I'm going off on these global topics. I also do some smaller scale things because we're talking about scale. We had a talk the other day on litter layers and mycelia and mushrooms right in the Sierra Nevada. Well, this is a mushroom camp in Oregon, and it's a commercial enterprise. So normally if you just pick a mushroom, as you know, right, you're just picking a fruiting body. But when you do it commercially, people tend to start to use destructive methods of harvesting mushrooms. They destroy the mycelia as well. So we talked about that. We have to do perspective taking. And a lot of times when people in other courses do perspective taking, they switch to maybe another part of the world other than the United States. I use the Shakers. And I think it's fairly interesting for students that haven't heard of the Shakers, and yet they're in the United States. They've been around longer than the United States has been around. They use a lot of ethnobotany. Their ethnobotany was tied to Native American ethnobotany, so we can go back and talk about, we do Native American ethnobotany as well, because I don't know much about it. I bring in some people from the local tribes, and they do 2 of my lectures for me. But then I can tie it back to that, and we can go all the way through kind of the changes in the Industrial Revolution that drove the Shakers into drove them down to a much lower level of productivity because they were trying to compete with the modern industrial world. We can talk about global trade because the Shakers shipped their products all over the world, even in the 1800s. So there's a lot I can talk about just by talking about the Shakers, and it's a culture that is dramatically different than what they are used to, and it's right within their own country. So it's a good topic to use. I have to talk about cultural diversity, and so in this case I use our early agriculture. And I sometimes, we talk about Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, where the civilization was kind of developing almost ahead of agriculture at the time. And there's a lot of proto-agriculture going on in the area. So I can talk about how, theories change over time, and we've seen that in some of the talks that we've had here. So that's another topic I have that I have to cover, and I keep bringing these in as I go along. We talk about understanding global systems. I do a lot with global trade, and I do a lot even with trade across the Mediterranean and the spread of different types of wheats and some of the other grains that were developed into wheats. But I use rubber as an example, and Henry Ford tried to set up a rubber plantation in the Amazon. And remember, I've got a lot of mechanical engineers who are going to go and work for Henry Ford at some point, so this at least is interesting to them. I'm always trying to entertain at some level, because I have students who are not necessarily interested. So this is the sawmill at Fordlandia in Brazil, and he tried to set up a rubber plantation that failed dramatically. I can talk about different cultures, because he tried to bring different culture right into the Amazon, and it failed not just as a rubber plantation, but as a cultural exchange, that he was trying to force people to eat hamburgers and hot dogs. And they penalized people for eating native foods, okay? That was kind of interesting that would happen. And they had American square dances and poetry poetry readings as well. So there were a lot of things that went on. And what's really interesting about this for my students is I show them this picture, and they think we're in Michigan at first because this is Henry Ford's sawmill at Alberta, Michigan, 40 miles from campus. And our students go there, and some of our students go there and spend a semester there studying. And actually, when Henry Ford set up Fordlandia, he took Yoopers, which is the endearing term we use for people from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and sent them to Fordlandia to set up the town, the sawmill, to run a whole bunch of the things because they were familiar with setting up a company town. So we also talk about company towns as when we talk. And so we've got company towns in, we talk about chocolate, and so we can do Hershey, Pennsylvania. Are the Shakers a company town? That's another thing that we can discuss. And so I'm weeding plants in and out of all of this so that maybe we'll get rid of a little bit of plant blindness along the way, but I'm trying also to fulfill the mission. When we talk about rubber, we talk about rubber moving to French Indochina, which might seem like a plant transfer to botanists, but it was part of the brutality that went on in French Indochina. And Tran Binh afterwards wrote a book called The Red Earth. He went on to become a leader in North Vietnam and in the fight against the government of South Vietnam in the 1960s and 70s. And he writes about his time on a French rubber plantation and how the brutality there was what triggered him to become a communist. So again, we were able to talk about plants and plant movement and global affairs as we move through this. And then we have to apply knowledge to contemporary global context. So when I do opium, I do just a little bit of kind of the old opium stuff. And we start about 1800 when I talk about opium. And this is a Civil War picture where opium was used as a painkiller. They're actually, because photography is around, then you can go on the web and you can find great photographs of piles of limbs under operating tables from the Civil War. And so that I didn't think I'd do that. We might be too close to lunch. We talk about opium and then the move to opioids. We talk about how what was known as the army disease after the Civil War was opium addiction. Okay, and there was so much, it's incredible the amount of opium that was used by both armies in the Civil War. And then it's also a modern topic, even if it's not always directly opium, but some kind of derivative, synthetic derivative. And we have some open discussions that go on that are 2 minutes. Okay. We have some open discussions that go on with students where they do some series of readings and then we talk in class. And it, to me, is pretty amazing is how many of my students know somebody or know of somebody, maybe not really a close friend, but somebody who has been affected by an opioid overdose and death. And it's, so we talked about that. It's another kind of Greek subject, but it's a contemporary subject, and it's tied to plants. Every task class has to discuss ethics. The first year I taught the class, I did an entire lecture on ethics, and that's when the students fell asleep, okay? They did not want to hear about that. So now I kind of weave it in. I make a point that I'm talking about ethics, and we do actually the SED ethics and some of those things in it, but we also do little stories from some of the things that my students have done while they're working overseas, and then we weave it in to the discussion. This is the rubric, how we're assessed. You don't need to see anything really on that complicated page other than to see that we do go and we do assess things, and that's part of the documentation. But I want to show you, because I've already alluded to it, I'm trying to build in 2 big themes to cover all those global literacy ideas and to bring in ethnobotany and plants. And one of them is trade, and then the other one is social, political, demographic, and economic structures. I spent a lot of time actually on demographics as we move along and how changing populations matter. And I'm trying to point out to them what demographic trends look like out into the future, and that there are a lot of different scenarios that people are presenting on that. So what are the results? it's hard to, it's not a really quantitative talk, but I will say that the class gets fairly good reviews from the students who actually take it. And they have comments like, this is a pretty good class for a HASS class, okay? There's always a qualification as to, if this is not thermodynamics and so it can't really be interesting, or there's a lot of work in this class for a HASS class. And so they wouldn't mind doing that work if they thought it would get them a job. So quick thank you. You may not know it, but I've used some of your work in my class. And I've used work from ethnobotanists all over the place because I just have to keep drawing in all this information. So thank you for all of your work.